Welcome, everyone. I hope today that your day is, as they say, filled with many blessings. We never realize how many blessings we have till we really understand what life is all about. And so today we're understanding a little bit more about life. And so we have here some beautiful women that have done a lot for, as they say, for their spirit. And so in that way, we like to acknowledge. We like to acknowledge each and every one of them. We like to acknowledge their communities. We like to acknowledge their families. We like to acknowledge the work that they are doing. And so in this way, we acknowledge the ancestors that are with us right now. And we thank you, each and every one of you, for being here because your ancestors choose you to be that light for others. And so we say thank you. And at this time, we give thanks to the one that is mother of all nations, and that is our mother, the earth. Itnistaha yon hanzadi. Our mother that has shown always the good mind, because no matter who you are, no matter what age you are, she is always loving you and taking care of you. And so that is why we always acknowledge her. We give thanks to her. And because of her love for each and every one of us, she has given us so much of her love, and that is the flowers, the trees, everything of creation, just to show us that anytime we have had trauma, these are the things that we would lift your mind. And so when you're out there, the wind is blowing, the sun is shining, or it may be raining, or it may be snowing. It is a sign of love to help us to get through whatever challenge we have. And so we give thanks to all those beautiful creation of love, and we look and we see that they're still fulfilling their duty because they know that it is needed to help us to lift our minds. And so we give thanks to all of them. We look and we see all these beautiful things that they are still fulfilling their duty. They are now getting ready because they have work to do this summer. And we are so fortunate daily that they are starting to wake and they are starting to remember a lot of what they need to do for us. And so we give thanks. So we even thank those that are in the spirit world. We think of the sun, the moon, the stars, the thunder beings, and all of them that have come together. We look and we see, even us, we have had mentors that have lifted us up to restore our spirit. And we'd like to acknowledge them too at this time. And we look and we see that they're still being of love and kindness to us. And so we give thanks. We look and we see the four beings. To you, you may know them as angels. They're always watching over us. And so we know that the Creator has done quite well to take care of us when we are going through all the challenges of life. And so at this time, we acknowledge the one who has created all. And we say with much love and gratitude, Oho, Nyawa, Miigwech. These are things that we always say. They are called words before all else. And so in a sense, people have called them land acknowledgement, but to us, we have always said, we acknowledge the woman that has created all. And so we acknowledge that female energy of all creation. And so at this time, I like to introduce myself because I always like to introduce her before I introduce myself, because I wouldn't be here if it was for her. And so I am known as Grandmother Renee. I cherish that name because it was given to me by young people that had lost their spirit, and I was there for them. And so they said, you remind me of my grandma, or I wish you were my grandma. So that's why I have the name Grandma. And so it is so rewarding to hear when they say grandma, oh, my head just turns like this. And because I know there's so many that are in need of a grandma, I am so blessed to have been called grandma. And so I come from Six Nation. I have many names, I should say many hats. And like everyone else, I am known as Grandmother Renee, but I am also known as Ganadisa. That means she completes the village. And I'm also known as Renee. And then sometimes I'm known as Mrs. Well, I always like to be just referred as Renee. Thank you. And so I am of the Bear Clan, the Cayuga Nation. And I have chosen this journey when I was in the sky world because I knew that this journey was to help others. And that was my purpose, to help others, to build bridges to build understanding and to create a better world, because that's what each one of us is here to do, is to create a better world. And so I welcome each and every one of you, because you're on your path to help all of us to create this new world. So welcome again to creating this new world. And I'm also a mother, a grandmother, a great grandmother, and an auntie to many. And so I say, welcome to this circle of love. Oh.
Nyawa for that opening, Grandma Renee. It's so great to be here with all of you amazing, beautiful women in this space. Scano Jody Nigaso. My name is Jody Harbour. I'm an urban Indigenous woman, and I'm a mother, a daughter, a sister, an auntie, a great auntie, a wife. I'm honored to know all of you and be in this community here in Halton that is actually doing really wonderful things to bring community together. And we're blessed to have this platform to be able to connect with other communities, especially on a day like today, when speaking about our topic today can sometimes be heavy, for others to manage. And so, I just like to acknowledge, all of the energies and beautiful things that Grandma Renee mentioned and brought into our conversation, just so that we know that we don't have to carry some of this, this heaviness ourselves, and that we know that Mother Earth and the Creator offered other, of these gifts for us to help carry the burden that we experience every day in our lives. So I just like to thank you so much for joining us on our Grandmother's Voice platform as we talk today about something that has been in our communities since contact, for a long time. And we today get to acknowledge it and acknowledge the root cause of many of the problems and violences against our women, that it still exists today. And so, Nyawa, thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to our discussion today.
Good morning and good afternoon, sorry. My name is Sherry Savelle, and I am a Cree woman from Treaty 6 territory who makes her home now in Halton. And I've lived here for about 25 years. I have lived in the urban center all my life, but also know the hardships that our women have faced, and especially my mother, knowing how violence is a part of my upbringing, just because of the woman that she was, and an Indigenous woman. I'm honored to be here amongst all of you, to have this very important discussion, to raise the awareness within our own community, but also to come together as friends and allies, people who are doing very similar work, and to know that when we are sitting in a circle, that the work is lighter, and that we can share and we can experience together instead of by ourselves, and be here humbly amongst all of you. So welcome, ladies.
And we'll say, if you don't mind, we'll just start with Kate from the Women's Center. Please, we'll introduce ourselves, and our viewers will be able to get to know who you are and what organization you're with, and the amazing things that you do.
I'm so thrilled to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this circle. And I'm absolutely feeling the energy, and I'm new to this. So I'm really enjoying the journey and learning how this all feels. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for having me here today. As was mentioned, I'm Kate Holmes. I am the proud executive director at the Women's Center of Halton. I am a mom, a daughter, a sister, an auntie to two littles that I just absolutely adore, and really enjoy doing work in the community. Our organization is investing in all women throughout all of their journeys, because every woman's journey is different, and we want to be there every step of the way. So if you are in need of services, we're a great spot to start, because we can also refer you to lots of other organizations and specific supports as well.
Go ahead. Anyone, Gemma, Sylvia? Go around when you're finished.
Sure. I'm also a mother, a daughter, only child, so no aunties or anything, which is disappointing, but that's okay. And I'm also very honored to be part of this amazing group of women. It's a deep, deep honor for me. So I'm the executive director of SAVIS, and we work with survivors of sexual assault. And we also have an anti-human trafficking team that works with survivors of human trafficking. So also know that the world is a place where women's equality and women's safety is often jeopardized. So very honored to be part of this forum.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to participate in this conversation today. I'm Jerusha, and I'm the manager of community education and engagement at the Halton Women's Place. I'm a daughter, a sister, an aunt, and a stepmom and a wife. And I, for those of you who aren't aware of what Halton Women's Place does, we are a safe shelter for women and children fleeing abuse. We provide a safe haven, but we also provide information and education so that we can support women and children to live a life free from violence. So we have 2 emergency safe shelters in Halton. And we also operate a community outreach program, which services approximately 400 to 600 women every year. So that provides supportive counseling, safety planning, assistance with housing and income support, community referrals, and we also do court support as well. We also have transitional housing units, and we also have the public education program, which is what I manage. And that's a really important part of the work that we do to create prevention and create violence prevention specifically. Because we believe that if we equip students and our community with the information and the skills they need to build healthy relationships, that we can work towards ending violence in our community. So I'm so honored to be here and speak to this important issue of Indigenous women and girls as well.
Hello, I'm Chandrina Vera Martin. I'm the mother, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a wife. So it's very nice to acknowledge those roles, and I'm very proud of being here today. I'm also the executive director of Thrive Counseling, and I'm also the co-chair of the Halton Violence Prevention Council. So Thrive Counseling offers counseling services to women and children who've experienced violence, and as well in the council works to prevent violence against women specifically, but violence against all members of society in a preventative type of way. So we come together as collaborative to try to do that work. And on a day such as this, it's very important to be a part of another collaborative and recognize how much this affects our communities and the community of Indigenous people. So thank you for having me on this panel.
Yeah, I called this Sisters in Circle. As we gather, and I think I know the experience, and you had mentioned it, Kate, how comfortable it is, and we really come with our hearts and show up as our full self, and it just makes that space feel more comfortable and allows us to go into those spaces of Sherry, you say, bravery or courage, right? Because these conversations can become heavy, and they will, because we're going to talk about realities, and maybe some personal experiences may come up just to be able to explain, where we got to today. But, Sherry, if you'd like to just start with us, maybe talk about the inquiry or wherever you want to take this.
Yeah, I think, it's so important, to have organizations here with us to have this discussion, because all of you are also allies, right? You're also doing the work that's very, very important, not only for women of all abilities and sexualities and races. And the important work that you do, it is so important. But not long ago, too, there wasn't these services available to especially Indigenous women. And this is how come we've decided, not only what the work that we're doing in the community, but also to be able to walk side by side with all your organizations in order to have even a piece of that cultural competency of what some Indigenous people go through on a regular basis. And it's so important to have these relationships that are built that you can turn around and call us and say, I didn't know, or can you assist us in this particular area? We know that Indigenous women are 10 times more likely to go missing or gone murdered. I have just one earring on my ear to represent, the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And, and I would be more likely, and Grandma Renee and Jody would be more likely to disappear and go missing without our loved ones. We know our loved one would look for us, but without the help of the police force. And that happens constantly across this country. We should never even have a day. May 5th should never be a day of awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. But we know that the future leaders will be, the future students, future youth will be taking on this role as well. Now, I know that we've done an awful lot of work with each of your organizations in the past to do just that, to build cultural competency within those in your organizations, but also more importantly, to be your friend, to be your relative, to be here when you may need us or we may need you. So it's very wonderful to have you. We do have the National Inquiry that had 231 calls for justice. And again, not everybody, but most people that we meet will say, well, what can we do? And we always go back to what has already been done with the 231 calls for justice, as well as the 94 calls to action for the Truth and Reconciliation. But also there's 435 recommendations through the Royal Commission on Aboriginal People. That was well before the Commission, Truth and Reconciliation Commission, as well as the Inquiry for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. So we know that the roadmap is there, and we just have to be guided in the roadmap that is there. Now, I know that Halton Women Place and Thrive and Savas and Halton the Women's Center of Halton has also gone on this journey, and you've seen an awful lot of things that you may never ever want to see in your life. I was a crisis counselor for a while in a women's shelter in Thompson, Manitoba, and it was very, very heart-wrenching for me to see some women that would come in there. One in particular was an Indigenous woman who had been brutally beaten by her non-Indigenous partner, and she looked like my mom. And I said, I can't do this work. So I really commend you ladies for doing the work that you do. My mom was abused by her partner quite a few times. And so I've witnessed that violence as well growing up. And thinking that I wanted to be on the other side as well to help women that are going through violence. But we all know where our gifts are, and all you ladies have a gift when it comes to the work that you do. So I'm wondering, Kate, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit more about, some of the things that you've seen, the changes, because I know that there's been policy, there's been law changes, and really, and we also know that we need to talk about the patriarchy because they're ones that are making the rules and the laws. But this conversation is deeper than that. But Kate, if you don't mind, just to talk a little bit about your role as well as some of the things and changes that you've seen in your life, the life of the being there. And I know that you've advocated an awful lot within your own organization.
Thank you. We are seeing so much more complexity than we used to see. That's something that I would like to start off with, that the concerns and issues and trauma the women that we are seeing are dealing with, it's multi-layered. It's just not one aspect in dealing with trauma. There's all sorts of things that are coming at them. And another point is the system is certainly broken. The women are coming in broken, but the system is broken. And it is really hard to find all the supports that they need in one central location, which is why it's so important that we're sitting here today in a circle so that it is not broken. And that's what we are finding is it's very complicated to reach out and get all the supports that you need. And traditionally we've had wait lists. And that is heartbreaking because it is not okay to wait 8 months for therapy sessions. We have reduced those wait lists, but it is at that point things have fixed themselves when they really haven't. So we want to be helping people immediately, not just thinking that we can get them the help in 8 months by putting them on a wait list.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Does anyone else jump in, ladies? If you like anything, just have the conversation go and flow. I know I can say things. I have a lot to say.
I'd like
Yeah,
to
we'd love
add
to hear.
some of the things that Kate's saying in terms of what we're seeing at our agency, seeing that heightened acuity, people coming in with, far more complex situations, needing more from service providers that perhaps have even a little bit less to offer them, which is a very difficult situation. The rates we're seeing again of both charges for violence against women and also for people seeking help have gone up. Our wait lists are higher. So those are things that deeply concern us, that we want to see the situation change in a way. We don't want things to be getting worse. In fact, we've been talking about this, as you say, for many, many, many years. And we do know the roadmap is there. We know what needs to be done. Really, it's trying to bring things into play that will change the trajectory, certainly away from the direction of growth that there is now in terms of violence.
Renee, you're on mute, but sorry, go ahead. Were you saying something? Because I feel like this is like a perfect opportunity. Go ahead.
I think a grandmother or an auntie should go into the schools because there's a lot of young men. That's where it really starts at that young age. In fact, I was just talking to my great grandson today about sex, and I said how to treat a person. I says, because we have to do something, and that is go into those schools and talk to them. Because originally they would have been given this as a passage rites of passage, is how these young men are to how to conduct themselves in that relationship. And I talked about, I said, me and your grandpa, we went together. We didn't have jump in a sack right away. I said, that was not looked at. I said, what we did was we had to go together. We went together 4 or 5 years before, we were old enough. And I said, we had to fight those desires. I said, we're not inhuman. I said, we were teenagers just like you. And so but I talked to him in a way that, was sitting, while we were preparing a meal. And I was talking to him in a kind and gentle way. I said, my grandma taught me that. And so this is why I'm here. Your Dutta is here to explain a lot about sex. And I said, when you know, I know you're going to like a young girl. And I said, these are things you need to remember. I said, you're going to have those urges. Take a cold shower. Because that's how, and I said, in our way, the women, there was a rites of passage, like you're not to eat a strawberry for a whole year. I asked him because he loves strawberries. I said, can you imagine going without strawberries for a whole year? And so those are some of the things that, we talked to both of them. And because a long time ago, relationships, we are so conditioned today, society, as soon as they're born, they got to have a boyfriend and a girlfriend. And and we need to go into the schools. We need to go into the schools and start having a grandma speak to them. And I think this would kind of nip it in the bud because by the time they're grades 6 and 7, some of them want to have babies. Maybe even before that, they want to have sex. And this is what we got. I said the Creator created this gift. It was to be sacred, not to be abused, not to harm anybody. And I said, if you like a girl, I said, what you need to do is show her kindness and goodness. That's what they call a gentleman. I said, walk with her, talk to her, communicate with her. She wants a friend, first of all. She wants a friend that can be there. Communication is very important for later on in relationships. So I think it needs to start in the schools.
Yeah, on that note too, actually, I find that Renee always jumps in at the right time, right? It's just like a good balance of love with the realities. And I remember Sylvia, the last time I was in Savas when Sherry and I did some training and some work with your staff there. I love the men's program that you have there. And it's about that balance, right? And everything that we do is being able to support everything in balance. And so having those spaces for the safe spaces for men too, right, to heal and to learn. And so I don't know if you want to jump in, Sylvia, and just talk about whatever you like, but that's what came to me as Renee talked about that.
So the men's program, unfortunately, we didn't get funding for it, so it's not as robust as it was before. But I think we always have to look at the fact that if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So I think, for years there was a real sort of fight between, sort of ensuring that the education, as grandmother Renee talked about, the fact that young people need to know what is a healthy relationship. What's healthy? Someone texting you 500 times a day is not healthy. So it's sort of breaking down those stereotypes that a healthy relationship is respectful, it's nurturing, it's kind, it's all those things. And so that, and a lot of young people, a lot of their sort of what's right or wrong is coming through social media. And so what we find here at Savas is a lot of young women are being sort of like groomed and sort of coached through social media, and so we're trying really hard to sort of debunk those myths. The fact that someone buys you things, or whatever the case, that doesn't mean that they're the person that you want to be involved with, or they're the person. Because often what we find in our human trafficking program, that's the way traffickers groom the women. They're very kind at the beginning, and then all of a sudden you owe me stuff, right? So it's really important that we provide the support and that we really are where the survivor's at. Whatever the survivor wants from us or needs from us, that's where we're going to go, right? And that's really important. But I think education is very key as to what is a healthy and a respectful relationship.
I love the whole allyship component. And that's something at the Women's Center that we're starting to look at deeply as to how we can work as two genders to make change. Because I think it's going to take all of us to make change, to equal the playing field, so to speak. It's not just our work sitting here today. It's everybody's work. And so we're starting to look at that. But Sylvia, I'm so sad to hear that you don't have funding for that. So again, our systems continue to be broken in regards to what the government's funding, because here's something that Jody was just saying, how wonderful it was. And now it's no longer as robust as it used to be, when it should be more robust. So that to me is always continues to be heartbreaking. And through my journey at the Women's Center, I'm seeing that because of government funding, it's not perfect.
I totally agree with what everyone's saying, from Renee to grandmother Renee to Sylvia and Kate, because managing the public education program, like I see firsthand the need for it in schools. Like months before schools close, we're already booked up, and we're sorry that we can't really meet the demand that's there, because their schools and classrooms are experiencing these issues. When grandmother Renee said that it's important to address these issues early on, it is happening in grades. And it was shocking to me at first, because I'm assuming, okay, high school, but it is in grades 6, 7, and 8 that you're getting emails about boys are harassing girls or rating them or engaging in inappropriate comments or behaviors. So it's really important to address those unhealthy attitudes before they turn into harmful behaviors later on. I think that's super important. And that's why a lot more relationship health education needs to be embedded into the curriculum. So it's not where organizations like Savas or Halton Women's Place, we have our engagement male ally program as well, but we can't get to every single student in Halton, or even like, it's not just Halton students that deserve it. It's every single student should have this education. And across the board, you always hear from the adults and the teachers saying, I wish I had this education when I was in school. A lot of us don't have this information from our families, unfortunately, or if there's a family where there's trauma, they're maybe not equipped to even like be able to be in a space where they can have this conversation about what a healthy relationship is. From the time we're born into relationships, and yet we're not having these explicit conversations about what healthy love looks like, and what's the difference between unhealthy behaviors and healthy, and what's healthy. So it's super important for us to really invest our time into making that available and accessible to everyone across Ontario and in Canada.
And again, I'm going to go back to just Indigenous ways of knowing and the right time and prophecies. This is where I bring in the learning that I've had over the last, 10 years, getting connected with my culture and realizing that that's what's been missing in society, is those really valuable relationships that were existed here, those teachings, that knowledge from Indigenous people with their connection to the land is that just goes through everything else, and it's in your life. So I'm excited because when I've had conversations, Sherry and I have had conversations with all of these groups. I think just most recently, Jerusha, with your team over there, it was, what we know grandmother's voice can bring to these relationships is that education, because it's a community base, and everything that we do, we think about the generations before us, 7 generations, connecting with the land. And so I'm really feeling strong and supported in this circle right now, and that this is going to become even stronger because we do know that we can support each other in this community. Did someone else want to jump in?
And just that support, right, Jody? Where what Grandmother's Voice is doing in Halton is to raise that awareness, and not only that, but to bring other people and work side by side, because both of us at separate times have been guest speakers with Halton's Women's Place, but not developing those deep relationships that we know that we need to develop these deep relationships, and to continue it, and not just, there's an event or a vigil that we need an Indigenous person there. It's much more than that. It's much more developing those relationships. And so with what we're creating with Grandmother's Voices, there's so many people that are coming forward, so many Indigenous people that want to come and do the work and stand shoulder to shoulder and side by side with us. And so we know that, we've had these conversations too, and saying like, we'd love to have, because I work for the Catholic School Board and Jody part-time, but to have an elder side by side with a chaplain, right? To have these different opportunities for elders and grandmothers to come in, and we underutilizing our elders, not only Indigenous grandmothers and Indigenous grandfathers, but underutilizing our elders. And we have to play that silly game of systems and government, right? We have old folks' homes that, here they are just wilting away in old folks' homes where, they could be utilized to be that older voice of reason, and even being the role model to those young boys and young girls. We know that a lot of kids are being left on their own, and we know that boys are also watching pornography, and that's where they get their idea of sex, and that's violent sex. It's sex, forcibly sex, and of course the horrible assaults and violence. But yes, it is a community. That is how Indigenous people live together in community, that we would be able to say, okay, Sherry, I know who your mom is, and I'm going to go and tell her that you've been acting up, right? And you don't want the wrath of your mom coming after you. So you're going to be at really good posture and behavior when you're out in the community, because you don't want to disrespect your mother and you don't want to disrespect your family. But within the nuclear system, right, of houses and then 2.5 kids, and you can't have your grandmas and your old people living with you, or even your aunts and uncles, because of just the way that society and the Western mindset is. But yes, really reutilizing and rethinking, and having politicians to really be brave, to really take on their own system of governance, to take on their own system of whatever the political agenda is. But we need more women to stand, and more men to stand up and do this work. Again, Moose Hide campaign, that again is, men taking responsibility and accountability for the violence against women and stopping that violence against women. So those two certainly are, work in tandem. But we need more politicians and not doing the politics speak, but really do the work in the House of Commons and be able to advocate for programs, for your men's programs, for the overcrowding of spaces. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, and then yet we don't have and keep on going back there, Kate, the system is broken. And so, but we can fix it when we're all together in a room. Well, maybe not fix it, but support each other when we're in the room together, support not only our mental health, but your mental health and the mental health of our community.
So Sherry, I'd love you to talk more about, standing shoulder to shoulder and beyond having somebody do land acknowledgement, and because I do find that quite often hypocritical, and that's always bothered me. How do we actually do this? From somebody who is non-Indigenous, teach me at how we can work deeper together.
Renee,
it's one of those things that, it's relationships, right? And for such a long time, Indigenous people have been excluded from this relationship. And we've only been included maybe in the last 20 years or 25 years. I know I was always doing the work, but more importantly, that the voice and place and space is coming forward. And just having allies, right? Like, understanding that there is a complex system, a complex history, that we are here to tell you the truth and the truth tellers, but not for you to go away that, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for all these things that have happened, and then stops you from learning, right? This is your role and responsibility as a Canadian citizen to learn the history of Canada, and to also learn the violence that has happened on these lands, the theft of land, the difference in when we're starting to talk about sovereignty, whose sovereignty, why are we trying to have sovereignty in Quebec when this is Turtle Island, and Indigenous people need sovereignty as well. So when having more people knowing what they know and being educated by the very people that we are talking about, I think really stands to that point of having an awful lot of power in when we're standing shoulder to shoulder and learning from each other. Everybody's going to have opinions, we know that, right? But why can't we have a respectful dialogue and respecting each other, right? And that goes back to wanting to have your own opinion and maybe forcible opinions, but really having those discussions in a very comfortable, safe place, but also a very brave space when we can agree to disagree as well. Does that answer your question, Kate? Yeah. I have to plug in my computer. It's gonna.
And I don't know, Renee, if you have your wampum close by. Mine's over there. I can walk and get it. But this is a great opportunity to show that. When I look at the wampum, and I think just from the teachings and being in the understandings every day, knowing that everything that Indigenous people do and are and represent are inclusive so much. There's just this flow, it's just like this circle. It's all of these, when you're not sure, Kate, that's why we're in relationship, right? It's like, hey, how can I? And it's funny that you even say at land acknowledgement, because if I could tell you, I answered 3 or 4 emails today of people that are, want to hire an Indigenous elder to do a land acknowledgement in our community. And, maybe about 3 months ago, or no, not even 3 months, 3 years is what I meant, when we're just starting to get our awareness out there and trying to engage our community to come together and really start to connect with their culture and feel confident in speaking, what they know. We would have asked or said, hey, would you like to do this event? But now it's like, my answers to everyone today was, this is a really good learning opportunity for you. There's so much information out there for you to read about, doing a land acknowledgement. But the most important thing is what connects you to your land? What connects you to the land that you're in? And, and I think we just went through that whole, COVID of being in the house. And the only thing we did have was to go outside. That's all we had. And so, I'm hopeful that it's not about land acknowledgements anymore, right? But people are still stuck there. So we hope conversations like this inspire people to take, like Sherry said, be brave. And, when you look at anything Indigenous that you're seeing on, as you're reading and doing your research and getting into communities, you just are comfortable and confident that it's a beautiful understanding culture and understanding, belief system, I guess. Do you have the wampum there, Renee?
I always have it.
I know. I figured.
I want to speak about this one. This one. How many of you know of this one? You notice one has a dark heart and one has a light heart. Well, this is called the friendship belt. This is what we had spoke about. We are here to support you. We are here to look after you, to lift your spirit up. And so this is one of the first belts that was given to the visitors when they came to this land, because we understood they had a lot of trauma to work with and because they had a lot of pain. And so we wanted to, but it also, our belts they're like memory aids, and a lot of our belts take many days of interpreting, but this one here really speaks about you too. You. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, your spirit gets broken. And you need to always think of taking care of yourself, wrapping that around you and taking care of yourself. Every day you have to look after yourself, being frontline workers, because what has happened if you don't take care, you have to be best friends. This is your best friend, your body. You have to be best friends with it. This is what causes wars within themselves. And so there's a lot of teaching with this belt. And it talks about, all our belts talk about is self-care. All our stories talk about self-care. Right from the beginning, creation story, it talks about how important self-care is. If everyone had self-care, then there wouldn't be this violence that we're having. All these troubled spirits, these souls have been broken. And so we have to, what we've been doing is ceremonies, long before, I would say almost 30, how old am I now? I have to stop and think, because we've been doing ceremonies for a long time for this very moment, and to be able to hang those dresses up, and to have people become more and more bringing our belts back, to share these belts, because it's sad that our leadership don't want you to know these things. And I have to say it, colonization has created us as victims, has taken away that ability to think with our hearts and only to think with our minds. And so we are in a society where we're always pushing everyone. And that's what they taught us, is to not care for anyone, and that's what it talks about, being a best friend to yourself first. Be best friends to yourself, because you are a sacred being, and in that sacredness you cannot do things that is destructive to another person, because even your angry thoughts, it affects your body before it affects anybody. And so it affects your kidney and your livers and everything. And know that these people that are perpetrators, they are very sick inside. Their organs, their health, and their wellness is gone. And so this is why they keep on doing, because they don't know how to step out of that behavior. And this is why we have to remember and remind them of this belt. Learn how to be friends with yourself, to make things right with yourself. That means, in your language, forgive yourself. Learn how to forgive yourself, because this was put on you. And there's so much more. But then there's this belt, another belt. We have many belts, and I have a lot of them right here. This belt is that true row wampum. How many of you know of this one? Well, this plays a very important role, and this is what should be out there on the libraries. This should be out on public buildings. This should be there because it talks about relationships and honoring each other's gifts and not controlling another person. And so it plays a very important role of relationships with one another. We all have gifts, and these belts was really meant for every child. It didn't say just our children. It says, as long as you are here, we ask that you take care of the land, the air, and the water, so that those that are coming will not suffer, and that is you. And so this is, our food has been tampered with, and this is why we have a lot of broken spirit. And so we have to go back to this relationship with the earth, because a lot of people have taken away that goodness that was to help us to be good minds. But the food that we eat has caused wars within ourselves. And this is why the pandemic came, because it taught us that we couldn't go to the restaurants. We couldn't have all this, what children knew as junk food, the fast foods. It was a time when we did a lot of home cooking, and it was a time of realizing our house became our home. It wasn't a place that we hung our hats on. It became a very valuable place. And so that talks about our relationship with ourselves, with others. And so there's much more into that. So I just, which belt do you want to hear next? But all of it was our relationship, that kinship with everyone. That's what it's all about. But leadership does not want you to know that, because we are here to help you. And that's what our commitment was when you're the first arrival. This is what we did. And we were broken because we did a lot of help. But a lot of our people haven't been tormented as much as others. And we are able to depend on that land to heal us. And so this is why even having a camp for the young men is to learn how to that relationship. What does the land mean to you? This is where the men feel they have this knowledge, as it is not a entity of love. It is known as something to take away and abuse their whole thoughts. And so I thank you for this opportunity. And I'm glad our ancestors did this, because it was made from a shell like this, freshwater shell. And it has a lot of metaphors of teachings on the white represents that good mind. That purple represents that grieving that we all carry sometime in our lives that causes us to act in the way that we do. And so we were told that there would be many that would come that had war within themselves. So just be careful. That's what they say. Do not let war take over inside you. And this is what we are here to do, is to remind us a lot of self-care. And so I say, Nyawa.
No, don't stop.
Oh, don't stop. Well, I got some more.
I'm like, oh,
I'm absolutely enamored. I could listen for hours.
right.
Hours.
This is the foundation that grandmother's voice is built on, right? The voices and the this, just love and how do we bring it back and embed it in these systems that are broken?
Yeah.
And they, right?
And it truly
This
is
strand
love.
here,
I'm feeling it. I am absolutely feeling love. It's great.
yeah, this strand here is the wiping of the tears. You almost have something similar, but we use the shell to make a tiny little bead. Can you imagine trying to make a bead out of this without electricity? This is what our people did. We created houses, 2-story houses, without electricity, without all these tools that men have today. And we give it back to the earth. We only let it exist for 20, 24 years. Then we would burn it and let it go back into the earth, so that we were not taking away your life, because trees are needed. Everything is needed to have wellness and well-being. And so this came about as a dream in one of our chiefs, Jake Swamp, and he had this dream that we were to help the people, all the people. And so this is what we did. We had a big gathering at the headwaters of Mississippi. Can you imagine that? The people from 4 directions. We came to do ceremonies for the whole world, to help them to break from this pain that they have, and to share those tears. And this is what we did. We were the people we broke into 2 sides we have ceremonies of wiping the tears, taking care of the grief, so that you do not cause harm on yourself or others. And so we did this because we were asked to, the dream, the ancestors told us. And so our chiefs had talked to the other leaders of Turtle Island. And so on one side of the gathering was the people from the east and the north. And on the other side was the people from the south and the west. And we did this ceremony to help the people, to wake them up and not be, as they say, stuck in grief. And so we did this ceremony, and all creation was with us. You don't believe in miracles. We still have that power of miracles. When we were doing this, our chiefs and our leaders and their leaders, we stood together. Can you imagine? It was a beautiful day. We were to go to the headwaters to do this ceremony. And when we were going, they say even the eagles were fought ahead of us on this convoy. And it was true, because I've seen this. And when we got there, it was amazing, because where we were to be, there was other people. So it was like creation said, no, this is not the place to be. So where we went, the chiefs, the leaders, we went and we found a grove. And it was just like old times. Here we were dressed in our regalias. Can you imagine? There was people of all different nationalities of the Indigenous people, all of them. And it was so beautiful. And we started, and the chiefs, they had to speak 3 languages. Our chiefs spoke to them in our language. Then we got it translated into English, and then it was translated into Spanish. And so they did this. We were there. And what we did was, before we even gathered, there was this rain, this big storm. And it was one of those storms that washed out roads. We said it was because all the ancestors were gathering, because it was a powerful moment. And so from that moment, because of that rain, we waited for a clear day. And so we knew it was time. And we went and we gathered in that group. And so our chiefs started to talk. And it was a beautiful day. And as he spoke, we have these 15 strands of wampum to bring that, to release that grief that we are carrying. We stood in for our people and our home people that were back home that weren't able to make the journey. We stood in for youth. We stood in for the people all over the world. We stood there to do the ceremony, not for the wellness of Indigenous people. We did it for all of us, all of you, because we wanted this to be a better place for the coming faces. And so what happened was, just as they were getting down to the last strand, the last 4 strands, we didn't notice, but the clouds had gathered. And when we were started in the last few strands, it started to rain. It came down very gentle. And then after a while, it just came. And it came, and here was our leaders. They were standing there in their regalia, and they continued to talk. And everyone that was there, I still get goosebumps talking about it, because it was the ancestors that were crying. And just as they finished, the sky opened up and the sun shone down on all of us. It was amazing. And it happened again because we took care of one side. The other side had to take care of us this time. Again, at the last few strands, the rain came again. And again, when they finished the strands, the sun opened up again and it shone. And it healed that time of grieving. And so our leaders, our men and women, the leadership, the clan mothers and the faith keepers, and they went around and they brushed them off. They're taking away of the grief. And this was passed around. This was passed around to all the people. And I was chosen to do the last part of that ceremony. And I feel very emotional speaking of it now, because I was to take all that pain, all their prayers, and I went to the waters, the headwaters of Mississippi, and I put that in that water, and I stepped into it, and that water was not even cold, because I walked out into the waters, and I did that, and I asked the waters to carry that power of our prayers, the power of our ceremonies to help all the people. And so what it is do with the headwaters of Mississippi, it goes all out. And so we've been doing ceremonies for this day, for the tears, the red dress, for all these things, that the injustice that is not only happening to the women, but also to the men. The men have been abused. This is why they're violating. The men have also been abused, because I worked in a treatment center. I know this. There's more men that have been violated than women that came in there. And so we have to do this for all. And so this is why I carry this wampum, because it was to tell this story, to share that story of what ceremonies have been doing. And I am so grateful that we have been on this journey of building these bridges, restoring those bridges that were broken, restoring those relationships, causing division. And so this is why we created a healing garden at Grandmother's Voices at the site, and we welcomed everybody. And those that came from across the waters, that had lost, that had seen trauma, we welcomed them to come and to let go of their grief so that we could create this better place for all mankind. And so, and you know what? That was given in a dream too. And it was completed before the first child was found. That first child that was found. And I know youth were there, and I want to say thank you for coming, because we are the fire for the future. We are that fire that was going to bring this love back in, because they said, we were also told in our prophecy that this fire was going to come, and that fire could represent love or of destruction, of hate. And they said, we will know in time what it was. And it was the fire of hurt and pain and anger. And so we kept this fire going by doing our ceremonies. And so this fire is lit. And again, we had passed that fire on to each and every one of you that is here right now, that are doing the work of bringing this relationship together. And so this is why we have, as they say, we have done these things, is so that we can do this together. We need each other. We are family. We are a family, and we need to come together because we have the same color blood. And that is the beauty of it all. We have the same color blood. And we are to act different because we have, each of us has a different gift to give to society. That is why we feel different. That different is our gift to give to society. It's just like having Christmas being received by so many gifts, and that is under the influence of love. Each one of you are here for that purpose. So I say, Nyawa.
Mioa. Yeah, all of that, right? You know, we come into these spaces. I'm sitting here thinking, and I have a smile. I mean, I always have a smile when I hear Renee or any of our elders or grandmas speak, because they come in, you know, at the right time, at the right place with the right messages. You know, and I'm thinking, as I'm looking at you, Drusha, yesterday when we were on the phone talking about, like, what is this space? You know, what does it look like? And, you know, what are we going to do? And, you know, I wasn't sure. You know, we created a PowerPoint, you know, that we share with our community partners to kind of, you know, what's that word? Unpack, you know, what missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is, and how can we, and what do we need to do? It's like Sherry said, you know, we have this blueprint or this map that, you know, we have to create, you know, based on the education system and the government mandates, and this is what we need to do. But after that conversation, you know, it's really knowing that we know all of these things. We know that the system's broken. We know that this exists. We know that we deal with this every day, but how do we continue to move forward to do this work and to be in this space? And, you know, Renee just shared some amazing messages of hope and love, you know, and Sherry and I have been blessed to be a part of some of those ceremonies that she does and the elders do. And it's as magical, if not more, than what she just spoke of, when you feel that unconditional love. But, you know, I put in the chat just now the kind of, I guess, the PowerPoint and deck that we created to help guide our, you know, relatives through learning about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And what does it mean about the, you know, the calls for justice and the 231 calls for justice, and where do you fit in, and how do you find it, and how do you navigate through those kinds of, like, that kind of information? You know, it took years of the process for this, the inquiry, you know, and today was a part of another conversation that talked about the years it took for, you know, some of these cases of women that were murdered to close just because of racism. And, you know, we can focus on all of these things and wanting to know statistics. You know, I know I believe that's what society has created for us, is we need to know numbers, and we need to, you know, be focused on that. And we need to know that to believe it. But from what I'm hearing, and what I heard Grandmother Renee just, you know, deliver to us, is that we really have to pay attention to our hearts right now, and acknowledge that, you know, we just spent this beautiful time together, and we created this space of love and healing, knowing that we showed up in this circle to honor, you know, the women that are missing and the children that are missing, and the ones who've gone ahead of us. We know that they're here to support us in the work that we do. So I'd like to I'm kind of just, noticing what time it is. Ask if anyone would like to share anything. Renee, did you want to?
I feel this because my dad's sister never returned home. And I saw my grandma look out the window all the time, wondering where she was, why she never called. My aunt went off the reserve to find work, and she found work, and she would write to my grandma, and she'd come home to visit. She would come on a regular basis. And then she told grandma that she had a chance to go to another town to make for a better job. And that's the last my grandma heard of her. So this is I know that pain my grandma, because I used to see her looking out the window. And I know that pain my dad had, knowing his sister, he never had closure. None of my brothers, his brother or his sisters had closure on that. And even for us to still feel that our parents, our uncle and our grandma's pain, that she never came home. But I know she came to me in my dream one time. And she, it was amazing because I was sitting at my grandma's, and I was sitting on the front porch, and my grandma lived far off the road. And I seen this car pull in, coming down the driveway. And it was an old style car. And because my auntie she would probably be in her early 20s. She was very beautiful. And she gets out of this car, and I'm looking over there, and she's dressed in that style, that how she was when she left. And she comes walking to me, and she said, "You know who I am?" And she grabbed my hand. And she just thanked me. So it does mean a lot to me right now. Just like it does mean a lot to others that have lost their loved ones. And so this is why I'm here. I'm here to support others that have gone through that. And for you women that are helping them, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for the work that you're doing and helping all those other women. And but take care of yourself. This is heavy, and you need to take care of yourself because you're needed. And always remember that friendship belt. Always take care of yourself, and that's what I'm always reminding all of us. I have to remind myself of that too, to take care. So that's my message to you, and I want to just say from the bottom of my heart, I'm very grateful that we have come together, that we are here together as sisters, as mothers, as aunties, as granddaughters, to help, to support, and those that are feeling this pain. So we are here together. So I say, Nyawa, miigwech.
I was just going to say thank you for sharing that, Grandmother Renee, because I think it's important for people, especially who are non-Indigenous, such as myself, to know that for every missing and murdered Indigenous woman, there is a community in pain. And a lot of times you will see that coming into your shelter or in our society, and we're not recognizing it, or we're not approaching it or addressing it in the correct way. And I think it's really important for all of us to be reflective as individuals and even as organizations to see in what ways are we complicit, whether it's with our apathy, because Sherry said something earlier on that really resonated with me, where when it's time, like, oh, it's every child matters, let's find an Indigenous person to do something, but it's just tokenism, but it's not anything meaningful. And I think it's really important for us to really be self-reflective and challenge ourselves to recognize, are we doing something meaningful? Are we just buying an orange t-shirt that says every child matters? Or are we doing something more that's actual, like action and putting policies in place within our organizations to show that we are actually ready to support Indigenous women. And in Not Halted Women's Place, we have created a lot of policies to support women. We have a spiritual space as well, and we're engaging in different ways to do that. But also, just by having this conversation today, I'm partnering with Grandmother's Voice because we want to be provided with that guidance and have the greater connections, and to have Indigenous women know that we are here and we are able to support them. Because at the very beginning of when we were talking, missing and murdered Indigenous women face disproportionate rates of violence, but you would never know that, which is why we have this day, based on what you see in the media. Not to take up a whole lot of time, but very quickly, I was just thinking when I was reflecting on today that you can name so many people that are even not in Canada who were either killed by their boyfriend, Gabby Petito. We probably all know that name. I know the name Madeleine McCann, who's in the UK, who was abducted in 2007. And she still receives media coverage today. There's still an investigation. But can any of us actually name a missing or murdered Indigenous woman? And I think that speaks to how much there's a lack of awareness and how much we need to demand that justice and demand a focus and a spotlight be placed on this issue, and how much it really requires all of us to really look within ourselves and think of how do we need to engage in this, and what can I do meaningfully other than wear red or wear orange or even do a land acknowledgement, although it's important, but what's the next step that I can do? And I think it's really important to have that self-reflection as individuals and also as organizations. So I thank you for inviting us here today and for sharing as well, Grandmother Renee.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Jerusalem. And I think I know, we created Grandmother's Voice because of the gap, because Indigenous people, there's a lot of weight on our shoulders right now, finding our truth, coming home, dealing with the realities of life, and then also working in the space to support other Indigenous people. And then the extra burden of educating, right? Education. And so, it just seemed right with the guidance of our elders that this was what was missing. And we're so happy that, go ahead, Sylvia.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you for letting me be part of the circle. I very much appreciate that. And I really appreciate hearing Grandmother Renee. Thank you.
Thank you too for having me be part of the circle. It was a wonderful experience. I love listening to Grandmother Renee, and I say I could do it all day. So I just very much appreciate that. I will hope to see you again and be in this another circle with you all. Thank you.
I look forward to more of this work and continuing to stand together.
Yes, thank you. Sherry, did you have anything to say before we?
No, I just when we first started talking about Grandmother's Voice, there was only 4 of us. And now it is growing, and knowing that the support is there, but also the closing that gap. There is lots and lots of education, and I love how Grandma Renee said that it's done on purpose, that the leadership is keeping those belts from people. We shouldn't have to have Treaty Awareness Week in November just to talk about that, and then what happens after that. It's the relationships that Grandma Renee was talking about, and I think it's so key. And and part of education, because that's where I know my talents lie, is in education. Is that education always got us here, and education is going to get us out, and that's Justice Sinclair's quote, really. And it goes for everything. If we're able to create space and place, have those difficult conversations respectfully, then we can move forward in a respectful way to rebuild this nation, and rebuild this nation of how it was supposed to be, in recognition of the Truro Wampum, as well as the Friendship Belt and the many, many other belts that are on this territory. And we're just only speaking of the territory that we're in here, and there's lots of agreements right across the country. But it's really important to be having these conversations that we can learn from each other and be with each other, and to have strength in numbers when it comes to healing our nation. Because as women, we are life givers, we're caregivers, and we also know that we don't want to have another generation of doing this work. We need to, it'll happen, but I'm hopeful, and that's what we have to do. Is we have to be hopeful of the things that we are doing that is making a change, and we know that we're making a change. And thank you for joining us here today, ladies.
And I'm sharing through the chats. I don't usually share them through the chat because we do get sidetracked, and it's hard enough for us to stay on cue when we get into this like room of love, right? And it starts to flow. And but I just have to acknowledge some of these great messages, calling out people that can make change. And we do get a lot of support by Adam, but there's so much more out there, and I know the more work that we do together, the more that we show up in our community together, supporting each other. I know the programs that Grandmother's Voice, what we create is for our community, what is being asked for in our community. And like some of the conversations we've had in the past, what we create in our space, we know will support the women and the families in your spaces. So, this is about collaboration now, fixing those systems that are broken, working together so that the flow is natural and not, through resistance. And that's really what we're finding is happening with us, is trusting. Grandma Renee spoke today a lot about, just the way that, you trust. And when you see things that look magical, I think I'm just going to use my language there, you have to trust that was something to pay attention to, right? When you see those things that stop you and give you hope, and may seem, magical, you have to believe that it was given to you as a gift. So I'd like to just acknowledge this message today from Charles. This is a gift that you were here in our space, and that you've reached out to us, and you continue to be here. And we look forward to seeing you at our space in Milton. And it's very important that we continue to keep these conversations going. And again, if you go to our website, we're doing our best to keep up and provide as much support for your learning. And if you see through our chat, we've created that PowerPoint, look through it. There's some really amazing information there. And we really look forward. I think I'm going to see you sisters at our event on May 24th, which is a really amazing time for Grandmother's Voice, and sharing some amazing elders and knowledge that we've been working with. And I guess we're just going to, bring to our community to support everyone in the work that they do. So, this is another one from Charles before we go. I cannot say thank you loud enough, Grandmother Renee. Your words have healed me in my grief for my missing friend. Thank you to each of you for sharing your voices. Nyawa, follow us. We have some events coming up. Paint night is also on May 24th, and that is always open for everyone. And we'll see you soon. Nyawa.